The flashing red and blue lights washed over my quiet ranch like an unnatural dawn, throwing the sprawling fields into stark relief and painting everything in uneasy colors. That Saturday evening, 3 patrol cars rumbled up my gravel driveway, their sirens silent but their presence impossible to ignore. I set my coffee mug down on the porch railing, the ceramic still warm from the morning brew, and walked toward them, boots crunching deliberately against the stones. The lead officer stepped forward, his hand resting casually near his utility belt, not on his weapon, but close enough to remind me that he meant business. "Sir, we received a 911 call about suspicious activity and possible trespassing on this property," he said evenly. "We'll need to see some identification." I kept my hands visible as I reached for my wallet. "Officer, my name is Marcus Chen. I own this ranch. May I ask who made the call?" He glanced down at the small notepad in his hand. "Karen Whitfield, president of the Willowbrook HOA. She stated that an unauthorized person was occupying the property and refusing to leave." A faint smile tugged at my lips. Karen Whitfield. Of course. I knew exactly who she was, though she had no clue who I really was. This was about to get interesting. "Officer," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I purchased this ranch 6 months ago. I have all the documentation inside if you'd like to verify ownership." I handed over my driver's license. "Just to clarify, this property is outside the Willowbrook HOA boundary by about half a mile." 2 weeks earlier, I had met Karen for the first time. My peaceful Sunday morning had been interrupted by an aggressive knock at the front door. When I opened it, she stood there, a woman in her early 50s, wearing a fitted blazer despite the warm sun, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her highlighted hair was styled in that unmistakable, "I demand to speak to your manager" fashion. "I'm Karen Whitfield, president of the Willowbrook Homeowners Association," she declared before I could even greet her. "We need to discuss your violations." Leaning casually against the doorframe, I frowned. Violations? This property wasn't part of any HOA. Her eyes narrowed behind designer glasses. "That's where you're wrong. The Willowbrook HOA has expanded its jurisdiction to include all properties within a 1-mile radius of our community borders. You'll need to register immediately and bring your property up to code." I kept my tone patient. "That's not how HOAs work. You can't just decide to extend your authority over properties that weren't part of the original development." She thrust a thick stack of papers toward me. "These are your violation notices. Your fence is the wrong color. You have unauthorized livestock in that barn. Don't even get me started on that barn. You have 30 days to comply, or face fines." I didn't take the papers. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is private property, and you have no authority here." Her face flushed a deep, angry red. "We'll see about that. I know people, important people. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." After she stormed off, I did what any careful property owner would do. I installed security cameras. High definition, night vision, audio recording, the works. Something told me I was going to need evidence, and I was right. The harassment began almost immediately. Fake violation notices appeared daily on my gate, each one more absurd than the last. My mailbox overflowed with letters threatening thousands in fines. Then she began getting bold. One morning, I caught her inside my property line, snapping photos of my horses. "You're trespassing," I called out, making sure the security cameras captured everything. "Please leave immediately." She turned toward me, smiling triumphantly. "These horses aren't registered with the HOA Livestock Committee. Each one is $500 per day." I sighed, keeping my voice even. "There is no HOA Livestock Committee that has jurisdiction here. You need to leave now, or I'll have to call the police." "You do that," she sneered. "Sheriff Thompson is my brother-in-law. Let's see how that goes for you." But I didn't call yet. Instead, I documented everything. Every trespass, every fake notice, every voicemail filled with threats. I was building quite a file on Karen Whitfield. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just some random ranch owner. I was a senior vice president of development for Pinnacle Property Group, the company that held the master contract for Willowbrook HOA's legal services and property management. Things were about to escalate in ways she couldn't imagine. The harassment escalated in a pattern that left no room for complacency. Fake notices appeared daily, each more absurd than the last, detailing violations that didn't exist, code that didn't apply, fines that couldn't be imposed. My mailbox overflowed with threats of thousands of dollars in fines, and each envelope was like a tiny dagger designed to unsettle me. Karen's boldness grew by the day. One morning, I caught her walking along the property line with a camera, snapping photos of my horses, her expression smug as though she had won some imagined victory. I didn't raise my voice, but I made sure the cameras captured her intrusion. You're trespassing. Leave immediately, I said, my tone steady, deliberate. She glanced up from her camera and smirked. These horses aren't registered with the HOA Livestock Committee, $500 per horse, per day. I kept my voice calm, controlled. There is no livestock committee with authority over my property. Leave now, or I will involve law enforcement. You do that, she snapped. Sheriff Thompson is my brother-in-law. Let's see how that plays out. But I didn't call the police just yet. Instead, I gathered evidence. Every letter, every trespass, every voicemail threat was meticulously logged. Cameras recorded everything. I was building a case that would make her regret ever stepping onto my property. What Karen didn't know was that I wasn't just a ranch owner with a peaceful property. I was the senior vice president of development for Pinnacle Property Group, the company that managed Willowbrook HOA's legal affairs. Every illegal or fabricated move she made was directly under my purview, even if she didn't realize it. 2 weeks of this harassment had been exhausting but enlightening. Every trespass, every attempt to enforce imaginary rules, every snide remark was documented in precise detail. My cameras captured her boldest moments, the ones she would later regret. I knew she was building her own narrative, expecting to intimidate, expecting to enforce power she didn't actually possess. And then came the moment that would turn everything upside down, the 911 call. Karen had decided to escalate to law enforcement, reporting me as a dangerous trespasser on my own property. Her audacity was staggering, but it would also be her undoing. As the sun set, casting long shadows over my ranch, I reviewed the security footage. Every movement, every intrusion, every fabricated violation was logged, time-stamped, undeniable. Karen Whitfield had just made her biggest mistake. The stage was set. The red and blue storm was coming. The sound of engines approaching had already set my nerves on edge, but when the patrol cars rolled up my gravel driveway, flashing red and blue lights painting the fields like a war zone, my stomach tightened. Karen had called 911, reported me as a dangerous trespasser on my own property. The audacity of it was almost impressive if it weren't so infuriating. 3 cars, officers moving quickly, all focused on me as if I had suddenly become the threat in a peaceful, open field. I set my coffee mug down, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the porch to meet them, boots crunching deliberately on the stones. The lead officer approached, hand resting on his belt, eyes scanning me with a kind of professional caution that only comes from experience. "Mr. Chen, can you confirm that you own this property?" he asked. I handed him my driver's license and smiled politely. "Yes, officer. This ranch belongs to me. I purchased it 6 months ago. All documentation is inside, if you'd like to verify ownership." He ran my license, then paused, studying the papers I had ready. A flicker of realization crossed his face. "Mr. Chen, I apologize for the confusion. You are clearly the legal owner, but we'll need to speak with Ms. Whitfield regarding the false report." I nodded calmly, already reaching for my laptop. "Officer, I think I can help with that. I've been documenting her harassment for the past 2 weeks. Security footage, trespassing, fake legal notices. You'll want to see this." 20 minutes later, the officers watched in silence as footage played. Karen Whitfield walking across my property line, snapping photos of my horses, leaving bogus violation notices at my gate, and making threatening phone calls. Every false claim, every attempt to enforce imaginary HOA rules, every trespass, there it was, recorded, time-stamped, undeniable. Their expressions hardened as each clip progressed. "Would you like to press charges of harassment and trespassing?" the lead officer finally asked. I considered it, then smiled slightly. "Let me make a call first." I dialed Janet, president of our property management division, and explained the situation. "Janet, it's Marcus. I need you and Richard from HR at my ranch immediately. Karen Whitfield, from Willowbrook HOA, has filed a false police report against me." The response on the other end was swift. "We'll be there in 30 minutes. Stay put and document everything." While waiting, I walked the officers through every piece of evidence. Fake fine slip through the gate, bogus violation letters stuffed in the mailbox, recordings of her threats and her attempts to impose authority where she had none. They photographed each document carefully, nodding as the pattern of harassment became undeniably clear. Then, 30 minutes later, Janet's car arrived at the ranch gate, followed closely by Richard from HR. And with them, to my surprise, came Karen Whitfield herself. She had been picked up from her home under pretense of an urgent HOA meeting, and now she stood on my property, her expression slowly shifting from confident superiority to outright panic as she saw the patrol cars and the officers. Her eyes widened as they landed on me. Standing calmly beside the officers, my laptop closed but ready. Her smug, self-assured aura dissolved into dread. Every misstep, every fabricated threat, every violation she had attempted to impose, it was all about to come crashing down. Karen's next words were sharp, trembling with indignation. "What's going on here? Why am I being brought to a violator's property?" Janet stepped forward, cold steel in her eyes. "Ms. Whitfield, do you realize who you are standing in front of? This is Marcus Chen, the Senior Vice President of Pinnacle Property Group, the company that manages Willowbrook HOA's legal affairs. Your actions have consequences." The color drained from Karen's face. For the first time, the confident, aggressive HOA president looked small, powerless, and completely unprepared for the storm she had unleashed on herself. Karen Whitfield had expected to intimidate, to bully, to bend the situation in her favor. Instead, she found herself surrounded by authority far beyond her control. The patrol officers flanked her with professional precision, while Janet and Richard stepped forward, expressions carved from steel. Every confident smirk she had clutched to her chest in the past weeks began to crumble as reality hit with devastating force. "Ms. Whitfield," Janet began, her voice calm but cutting like a surgeon's scalpel, "are you aware that Marcus Chen is the Senior Vice President of Pinnacle Property Group, the company that oversees your HOA's legal contracts and property management?" Karen's lips parted in disbelief, a stammer caught in her throat. That's impossible. He's just a ranch owner." "A ranch?" Richard didn't flinch. "A ranch that sits completely outside HOA jurisdiction. Yet, you harassed him, trespassed on his property, and filed a false police report. Do you understand how serious this is?" I was just doing my job. The HOA board voted to expand our authority. I have documentation." Karen blurted, clutching at straws as a carefully constructed world unraveled. Janet's gaze was merciless. "No, you don't. There was no vote. You acted alone, abusing your position to intimidate and harass homeowners. This ends now." The lead officer stepped forward, voice low and firm. "Miss Whitfield, filing a false police report is a misdemeanor. You knowingly reported a fake emergency, wasting law enforcement resources. You're being cited for false reporting and harassment. This is ridiculous. I know people. My brother-in-law is Sheriff Thompson." Karen shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "Former sheriff." The officer corrected evenly. "He retired 3 years ago. You are looking at up to 6 months in jail and a $5,000 fine for the false report alone, not including civil penalties Mr. Chen may pursue." Richard advanced slightly, folding his arms. "Effective immediately, you are terminated from the Willowbrook HOA board. Pinnacle Property Group is severing all ties with you. You will be personally liable for any legal fees incurred by Mr. Chen and our company due to your actions. Any further attempt to access HOA property or systems will result in immediate arrest." Karen's clipboard, once a badge of authority, slipped from her fingers and fell to the ground with a dull thud. She was small now, diminished, her confidence evaporating in front of everyone who had once feared her. "But I was just trying to maintain standards," she cried weakly, her voice trembling. "By harassing law-abiding property owners and inventing rules, you mean?" I asked calmly, stepping closer, looking her directly in the eyes. "You turned a volunteer position meant to help a community into a personal dictatorship." The patrol officer handed her a folded citation. "You will receive a court date in the mail. I strongly advise legal counsel. If you come within 500 feet of Mr. Chen or his property, you will be arrested immediately." Karen muttered under her breath, complaining about unfairness, how no one appreciated her vision for the community. But the truth had caught up to her. She was facing criminal charges, thousands in fines, and complete loss of the authority she had wielded for years. Janet turned back to me, expression softening. "Mr. Chen, I can't tell you how sorry I am about this. We will be reviewing every action Ms. Whitfield took as HOA president. Many of her past decisions are likely to be reversed." "I appreciate that," I said. "Just make sure the next board president understands the limits of HOA authority." As the cars drove away, the air around my ranch seemed to settle. The red and blue reflections faded from the windows, leaving the property bathed in a calm, golden evening light. My horses lifted their heads briefly, then returned to grazing, blissfully unaware that they had been at the center of a ridiculous power struggle. Karen Whitfield had swung at a ranch owner and hit someone far bigger than herself. Her empire of intimidation, built over 8 years, had collapsed in a single afternoon. 3 weeks later, the final pieces of the saga arrived in my mailbox. 2 letters, stark in their official tone, confirmed what everyone who had witnessed the events already suspected. Karen Whitfield's reign of intimidation and false authority had come to a definitive end. The first letter was from the district attorney's office. Karen had pled no contest to filing a false police report and harassment. Her sentence was clear and unyielding. 6 months of probation, 100 hours of community service, and fines totaling $5,000. In addition, she was ordered to reimburse my legal fees, a sum of $8,000. The justice system, slow as it often is, had finally recognized the audacity and illegality of her actions, and the consequences were substantial. The second letter came from the newly elected Willowbrook HOA board. Their tone was formal, almost austere, but the content was satisfying. An apology, a full acknowledgement of the overreach of the previous administration, and the promise that corrective measures were underway. Their investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. Karen had systematically abused her position for years, inventing rules, levying fines on unsuspecting residents, and diverting money into an account that only she controlled. Forensic accountants were still untangling the details, but initial reports suggested she had embezzled nearly $50,000 during her 8-year tenure. I set both letters aside, letting the weight of them sink in. Justice had been served, and the truth, undeniable, now lay in black and white. I stepped out into the late morning sun, feeling the warmth on my shoulders, and watched my horses graze. They lifted their head briefly as I approached, then returned to their quiet, unbothered existence. Oblivious to HOA politics, fines, or false authority, they were happy simply to be free. The entire ordeal had been surreal. What began as minor harassment had escalated into a dramatic confrontation involving law enforcement, corporate oversight, and the unraveling of a small-town tyrant. Karen Whitfield, who had wielded the HOA presidency as though it were a personal kingdom, had finally faced the consequences of her overreach. Her credibility in Willowbrook was destroyed, her influence gone, and her finances strained. The carefully constructed persona of authority she had maintained for nearly a decade had evaporated like mist in the morning sun. Sometimes, I reflected, the best way to deal with a bully isn't to fight directly. Sometimes, it's to let them swing so high that they hit something much bigger than themselves. Karen had swung at a ranch owner and, without realizing it, hit the boss's boss. Her downfall was both swift and absolute. Reports indicated that she had moved 2 states away, living with her sister, leaving behind the ruins of her HOA empire. Her combined fines and required reimbursements, totaling $13,000, became an expensive lesson in accountability and authority. She had learned, painfully, that power abused always carries a price. As I returned to the porch, coffee now lukewarm in hand, I surveyed the ranch. The red and blue lights were gone, replaced by a calm, sunlit landscape. The horses grazed peacefully, unregistered, unbothered, and blissfully free. The ranch had returned to the quiet, steady rhythm it had always known. And in that stillness, I felt a profound sense of justice, not just for myself, but for the principle that no one, no matter how confident in their authority, is above the law. Karen Whitfield had learned the hard way, and the ranch, my sanctuary, had survived unscathed. Freedom, accountability, and truth had prevailed, and sometimes that was all that really mattered.